What's up, people? Welcome back to another episode of Stars and Garters. I'm Katie Pettit, and I have missed a couple of weeks, but we had a total snowpocalypse over here in the south, and so I did not have the means to record, but I do now. And so this topic that I'm going to be talking about has been on my mind for a while because my YouTube feed just keeps giving me more and more videos on this topic for whatever reason. And I thought, hey, I like movies and TV and video games and books, and I am a relatively intelligent human being, so why don't I give my 2 cents on it? So today we are going to be doing a bit of a deep dive. I don't know what constitutes a deep dive, but I'm going to call it a deep dive into strong female characters. That archetype or trope or whatever you want to call it. That genre of characters. Also, I am a female, which is probably helpful since most of the videos I've seen on this topic were done by men. Not that that's a bad thing. I just think that I can offer a perspective that's closer to the topic as a woman myself. So, yeah, thought I'd give my 2 cents on this topic and take a swing at it. So, let's get into it. First of all, a few disclaimers. I am mostly going to be focusing on good examples of strong female characters. Not that I think there's no merit in pointing out bad examples, I just genuinely believe that you can learn more from a good example of writing than a bad one. And secondly, and this goes hand in hand with the first disclaimer, we are dealing with fiction, and fiction is almost entirely subjective. I say this because I've seen too many times people get way too deep into this stuff, especially topics like this, and when people don't agree with them, they end up treating them like they're somehow intellectually inferior, and that's just dumb and untrue because it's subjective. So be humble, everybody. I know this is it's not necessarily, I guess it is a divisive subject, so just be humble and don't hold yourself higher intellectually above other people for their opinions on fiction. Okay, so why, I first want to take a crack at answering why are strong female characters often so divisive, especially in our current culture. There's a lot that can be said about the changing culture and the rise of new ways of feminism, messing things up and having screwed up standards and just being generally unhelpful. But those things are true, but what I think usually happens a lot of times with these characters when they're done poorly is writers trying to please everyone and end up pleasing no one. Um, I understand this as a writer. You have your extremes on both sides. Some people want female characters who can do no wrong, beat anyone in a fight, and give a big speech about screw the patriarchy. And then at the same time, you do have people that I know some people who don't like strong female characters at all and think that action and power are for the boys. And then you have literally everything in between. And if you're a writer, it's kind of like your job depends on producing something that everyone will like, because the more people like it, the more people see it or buy it or read it or whatever, and that's kind of what your job hinges on. So a lot of this problem stems from something that a lot of problems stem from, which is wanting to make a profit rather than attempting to create a good story. And as somebody who is not a writer in a big sense at all, someone who does not work for movies or write big selling books or anything like that, I am aware that writers, actors, directors, whatever, who are producing these big, I don't know if important's the right word, like movies that more people are actually going to see or books or whatever it is. I understand that they need money and they can't just completely disregard what will make audiences pay. However, I think the entertainment industry needs is writers who love to write rather than those who are out to make money. And it can often feel like, I understand it can often also feel like no matter how you present your female characters, someone's going to be upset. But we have examples of how this isn't necessarily true, and I think the best strong female characters are the ones who are able to connect with the broadest audience. The ones that are the least divisive are usually the ones that are the most well written. And it almost feels, I don't know if tacky is the right word, but it feels like I'm saying, if it's popular, it must be good, which obviously isn't true. But I'm saying if it reaches a broader audience, then there's something in that. That's not nothing. And it probably does show something that was done right with the writing. And I will actually throw Captain Marvel's name in here as a bad example of this. I still stand by what I said in my episode back in season one where I defended the movie Captain Marvel. And though I definitely could have said it more eloquently in that episode, I believe that it is a good movie, and I believe that Captain Marvel is a good character. I think that her arrogance, that everyone gets mad about, that she's arrogant, I think that's a character flaw that we see her grow in. If any of you actually bothered to watch the Marvel, she does grow in that character. But anyway, I will say, I think her character failed at reaching the average viewer, at reaching many viewers, which I do think is, it would have been better if she was more appealing to the general audience, which again, it's like, I'm not trying to say that the more popular it is, the better it must be. I'm not talking about popularity, I'm talking about connecting with more people. And I think that a character, male or female, should be able to connect to a lot of people, no matter how similar they are to the character. So yeah, I will throw Captain Marvel in there as a bad example for once. I do still think it's a good movie. Fight me. As I said, with all of that said, I still think the best way to look at how to combat these struggles is to look at examples of successful and well written female characters. I will note that media wise, it does seem that video games have consistently had less trouble with overly girl bossified characters, just in my experience. It seems like they've not had as much of a problem with that as like the movie industry lately. However, unfortunately, video games have had a long history of swinging to the other end of the pendulum that says this is the only female character in the game. She's blonde and sexy and incompetent. Or this woman is the strongest warrior in the land, and that's why her best armor is a chainmail bikini. So, you know, they're both not great. It avoids one end, but the other end's not good either. So, but I want to look at well written female leads first, rather than like female characters who are side characters or members of group, though I will mention those later, because I think that female leads that are successful and well written have a much like that it's much harder to find. It's harder. I think female led, especially action movies, have a much harder time being successful. So I want to give you some examples of well written and successful female leads, specifically where they are the protagonist of the movie. They're the one going and doing the important stuff. First of all, let's go back a little bit. It's not old because it's the 90s, but to me, and probably my audience, it's kind of old. So let's go back in time a little bit and talk about the iconic Sarah Connor from the Terminator movie, specifically from Terminator 2, because I've only seen Terminator 2, but she was the main adult non-robot protagonist of that movie, so it still works in this category. We don't have to question whether or not Sarah Connor is a strong female character in the first place. She literally fights her way through this entire movie looking like an absolute baddie all throughout the whole thing. And the lesson that we can learn from Sarah Connor about good, strong female characters is that she has a reason to be strong. She doesn't just show up out of the blue and say, I'm here to save the day because I'm awesome. You can thank me later. She worked and trained and fought because she's a mother who is going to protect her son no matter what. That doesn't have to be the only reason that a strong female character fights, but that is her reason, and it's very, very strong. A poorly written female character often shows up with no real reason other than to make all of the other protagonists, especially the men, look stupid, while a good one is there because she has something to fight for, or she has something to protect. She's working towards something. Sarah does not have time to care about doing impressive things or showing anyone up because she is dead set on keeping her son safe. Next, I want to mention, for a much more recent example of a good female lead, I want to talk about Enola Holmes. Also, how have I not talked about Enola Holmes once on this podcast? That's crazy to me because I'm literally considering redoing my top 10 movies because I forgot to put Enola Holmes on there. I absolutely love this movie, and none of my friends even barely know it existed other than the fact that I have told them about it, which is crazy to me. It's an excellent movie. I highly recommend it. Anyway, Enola Holmes teaches us that strong female characters can stand on their own and next to someone else just as well. Enola doesn't actually start out like this. She grows into it throughout the movie. She starts the movie by believing what her mother taught her, that she only needs herself and her own goals, and that she does get by very well on her own cleverness and wit throughout the first half of the movie. but then she meets Tewksbury, and she decides not to leave him to his own devices, and that's kind of the turning point. She lets her, I mean, she lets him join her so that they can help each other and neither of them diminish each other in any way. She learns that she can stand strong on her own. She does that throughout the whole first half of the movie, but standing with someone else doesn't make her weaker or smaller. A bad female character usually ends the story by deciding she don't need no man, and that's the entire point. While a good one handles her position either as a solo act or as part of a group with respect, humility, and confidence. I also do want to mention Wonder Woman as another good lead female example, but I'm talking about her in a broad sense of the best versions of the character, since a lot has been done to and with her character over the years. You know, perhaps some bad examples in maybe a certain live action Wonder Woman film, but a lot of good examples in comics and especially in animated TV shows and movies. Like DC's animated stuff is incredible and she's often very well portrayed there. But just broadly, generally, the best sense of the character, Wonder Woman, when handled well, demonstrates that when a female character has incredible physical strength, it's not her only personality trait. So Diana is able to go toe to toe with Superman in strength, and that is canon. Don't get like upset about that, nerd boys. That is canon. And she doesn't even have a kryptonite. She was literally raised on an island entirely populated by female warriors. She's also characteristically kind, wise, and selfless. She doesn't feel the need to announce that she could beat up anyone in here every time she enters the room, even though she probably could, because she actually has a substantive personality. The characters around her can absolutely call her up if they need help kicking someone's butt, but they can also go to her for advice and for comfort. A bad female character can beat up all the boys and that's pretty much it to her. While a good female character is a person first. Next, let's talk about She-Hulk. I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. Man, that'd be crazy, right? No. I do want to talk about a Marvel female character. I do want to talk about Scarlet Witch, though. Specifically her arc throughout WandaVision, because I know it gets complicated later on, but we're talking about what she goes through in the events of WandaVision. Scarlet Witch shows us that strong female characters have flaws and they learn from them. I know that Multiverse of Madness makes that statement a bit iffy, but I stand by it because I'll explain it in this. Wanda is immensely powerful, but at first she never uses it to its full extent because she's content to be an Avenger and to be Vision's partner. But when Vision is taken from her, she does something objectively wrong with her immense power. She becomes manipulative, narrow minded, and uncaring at times, but it's all because she doesn't want to lose her family again. And the important part, the part that we can learn the lesson from, is that Wanda doesn't stay there and make everyone accept that she is this way. She realizes that she needs to change, that what she's doing isn't right, no matter the reason. Yes, the point is interesting because she does later become a full-on villain, but still, when she fully gives in to her malicious behavior again, she is purposely framed as the villain for the most part. So I think it still stands. A bad female character never admits her flaws, and everyone who does point them out is the bad guy, or her flaws are never called flaws, and they're just like, hey, everything about me is perfect. But a good female character comes to see when they're wrong, and they better themselves. And lastly, in this section, even though they aren't necessarily leading ladies, as in the protagonist of their shows, I do absolutely have to shout out Mirko from My Hero Academia and Maki from Jujutsu Kaisen, because they portray the better, or the correction for one of my biggest strong female character pet peeves. Mirko and Maki show that if a strong female character is going to be physically strong, she needs to look like it. Far too many FMCs are like, I can wrestle a grown man and win, but I'm also 115 pounds and have a teeny tiny little waist and perfectly slim little arms. That is, oh my gosh, it's so annoying. Mirko and Maki, on the other hand, are absolutely ripped, and they make us ladies want to go lift some weights, as they should. And because they are very prominently physically strong, they're in comment and they're like beating the crap out of all of these villains, and they look like they could do it. Like they have freaking biceps, okay? And so yeah, strong female characters, if they are strong, they look strong and they're not like pretty little petite size zeros. So, alright, so now that I've shown you these aspects and examples of a good leading lady, and also Mirko and Maki, I also want to talk about how strong female characters work as side characters or as members of a group. First of all, to have a well rounded cast of characters, I believe there needs to be male friendships, male female friendships, and there typically is a romantic relationship. I don't suppose that one is completely necessary for a good story, but those friendship roles, I do believe that a good story will have at least one of each of those. Yes, in a group setting, it is very important for female characters to have female friends who encourage them and stand by them and can relate to them in a way the guys can't. And who cares if half the internet is going to call them gay? They do it for the male friendships too, and it's very annoying and stupid. Just ignore it. Shipping is dumb anyway, so you can just generally ignore that if you can't. I understand it's hard to ignore it. I know that that's a big thing with the My Hero community is people hate the show because the community is ship crazy. And I understand how annoying that can be. I still think the show is incredible. But yes, shipping is dumb and it ruins male friendships and female friendships. So that's my little aside rant. Anyway, the female friendships work best when each girl has their own distinct personality. Some examples: for one, you have Artemis, Zatanna, and Miss Martian from Young Justice. Artemis is tough, trauma loaded, and mouthy. Zatanna is witty and charismatic, and Miss Martian is sweet and sensitive, and they all balance each other out. You also have Sue and Uraraka from My Hero Academia. They're another great example. Sue is intelligent and blunt, where Uraraka is soft but bold. I'll also point out from Split Fiction, my third all-time favorite game, Mio and Zoe are polar opposites, but they learn that it works when they come together, and the little common ground that they have is enough for a friendship. I think, personally, Tifa, Aerith, and Yuffie are maybe the best example of well-written female friendships I've seen, in my personal opinion. I don't know if that's a crazy claim or anything, but for me, I think they're probably the best well-rounded female friend group that I've seen. They each have very unique personalities. Tifa is the brawler with a heart of gold, Aerith is a gentle healer, and Yuffie is a goofy tomboy, and they all form close bonds with each other without making it center around the guy they are all connected to. Because that's something I hate about love triangles. Like, for example, there's the two competing love interests are often enemies for no good reason other than they both want the same man. But it can also go the other way, where the girls somehow bond over how dumb this man in their life is. So the Final Fantasy VII trio, these girls have none of that. They are all good friends, and they all are good friends with Cloud as well. It's not that hard, guys. You don't have to turn it into a love triangle. Honestly, love triangles are dumb. Thank you. Also, male female friendships that remain platonic are also very important and so rare. It's so dumb. Another reason why I hate shipping. I think it works best when they end up having kind of a sibling bond, like they both respect each other and there aren't even any romantic implications. And that's hard to do because, again, shipping and just like, honestly, popular media is so sexualized, it's so dumb. So it's hard to find, but it's really important, and I think it makes the story so much better than just shipping every single character. These, again, they're harder to come by because romance and spice sells. However, some good examples I was able to think of were Black Widow and Hawkeye from the MCU. I'm sure in the comics they've probably hooked up before. So in the MCU, though, Black Widow and Hawkeye, they bond over shared trauma, they fight, they bicker, and she happily watches his family and his marriage grow, and they support each other in that way. You also have Yuji and Kugisaki. They're probably like the most wholesome version of this. They both annoy the crap out of each other, but they also ride or die besties, which makes it sad because of this stuff. But anyway, this is not a JJK review. We also have Harry and Hermione from the Harry Potter books. They're another great example. Romantically, they both already have a Weasley, so their relationship is just best friends who have been by each other's side since day one. and they are able to protect and support one another and fight alongside each other without ever getting confused about what their relationship is. To go back to Final Fantasy again, you have Cloud's friendship with Yuffie, I think ends up being very brother sister. He finds her annoying, but he still comes to be a friend who will listen to her or step out and protect her and also let her fight beside him. I think that's really great. Um, it's funny though, because like that was what, four examples. There's just so few of them, and like when I write, I actually tend to almost add too many male female completely platonic relationships, partially because they're a pretty normal thing in my experience in my life, but also because they're just so sparse. Again, I blame shipping, but I think they're very important, and we need so much more of them. And so I tend to add all of them to my story, and because they're just there needs to be more. And then also, perhaps contrary to current culture, I do believe that well done romantic relationships can really strengthen a female character. Definitely not saying that a female character has to have a love interest to be a strong character. Like, heck no. Absolutely no way. But it is very meaningful when you're able to show that a woman who is not made weaker by having a man to protect and provide for her, and a man who doesn't protect her because he thinks she needs it, but because he loves her. A great example of this, to use Young Justice again, is Wally and Artemis. R.I.P. Wally. They did him dirty because she's never made to seem more docile or shy or whatever. Once they become a couple, she's literally his Spitfire, but she still leans on him and trusts him with her life. I would argue personally that Nightwing and Batgirl do this very well in the comics, even though he's often torn between her and Starfire, which is only popular because it's spicy, and I absolutely hate it. There is, in my personal opinion, there is no personality, what's the word? Charisma, chemistry between him and Starfire. It's just Starfire has always been a horribly sexualized character, and Dick Grayson is hot too, and they put them together because it sells and it's spicy. But with Dick and Babs, she and Dick, they're both geniuses, they're both bat kids, and yet they don't compete over who's better. They both respect each other for the role that they're able to play, and they support each other, and it's, they actually have things in common, and they do more than just hook up, is what I'm saying. You also have Peter and MJ, which actually most iterations of Spider-Man do well. Obviously, they're an iconic example and kind of unique to this list because MJ doesn't have superpowers. So she's not really fighting any supervillains like Peter is, but he uses his power to protect her, and she still completely values her intelligence and help that she gives him. So, with all of those different roles and relationships that are important to do well for strong female characters in mind, this may sound crazy because most people probably wouldn't point to this show as a prime example of anything, but I firmly think that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does a great job with all of these different roles. You have great female friendships like Daisy and Gemma, and Daisy and May as a more a mentor student type friendship. Fitz and Daisy have a very wholesome brother sister relationship, as well as Daisy and Max relationship, which I especially love because I am weak to a well written big brother little sister relationship, and Daisy and Mac are a great example of that. And you have multiple good, well written romances like the beautiful Fitzsimmons, who finally got married after 5 seasons, but I'll talk more about that in my next rewatching the MCU episode. And you also have Mac and Elena. Mac, first of all, I know we're talking about female characters, but Mac is an incredible man. I'll talk about him later, but Mac is an incredible man. He's the classic big, strong protector, but Elena is fiery and bold, and he loves her for it. So yeah, it does all of the characters well. Sometimes the plot gets a little convoluted and iffy, but character-wise, I have no notes, really. So yeah, those are some good examples. One broad note about writing strong female characters is that it's always better if you don't have to say it. She-Hulk. It shows a lack of substance when somebody has to point and say, "Wow, that's a woman. That's strong." wow, look at her, everyone, every 2 seconds. Like, it shows that you don't have a lot of substance in the character other than she is the strong female character. So to wrap everything up, I have thought a lot about what a good character is to me, and I do think that that is subjective. But I believe that a good character holds a balance of being relatable and inspiring. So, strong female characters should be that. They should be inspiring. They should be something that people can watch and think, man, she's awesome. Whether that be through character, like traits and personality, or just like cool, flashy superpowers. Both of those, I think, fill the inspiring requirement. But they should also be relatable. They need to have a human aspect. They need to be flawed. They need to interact with those around them without acting like they're the main character. Like, this is about me, even if it is about them. They need to have some sense of humility, and if they don't, it needs to be portrayed as a flaw, not as a good thing. So that was my 2 cents on the thing. That was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be because my outline is really long. But I wrote it more as a script because I had a lot more clear thoughts on what I wanted to say about this. I guess it might be just like as a writer kind of thing. But yeah, those are my 2 cents on strong female characters and when it is done well. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Definitely comment like who's your favorite strong female character and why you think she is done well. And make sure to follow, make sure to subscribe, make sure to share the pod with your friends, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.